Welcome, Matthew, to the NAL Talking Circle for August. Let's go ahead and get disclaimed. Let me play that disclaimer. Oh, now it's why is it? Hold on a sec.
Okay.
This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred.
Okay, now that we've got disclaimed, let's go ahead and look at the agenda, what we'll be covering today. So we're going to be looking at the overview of the APR review results, talking about some frequently asked questions that come up during office hours, and then some considerations for you to maybe take into consideration regarding the end of the grant year, because that's coming up as well. And then gearing up to share best practices in the October session.
Okay.
So, so again, your program contact and program officer for the interim is Dr. Donna Sabas Burns. And I am Olani Lilly. I'm a member of the OIE Technical Assistance Team. So this was just going to be a time for us to just say, like, how was your summer? How did it go? Maybe, Matthew, like, what are you doing to gear up for the new year? If you could just share a little bit about that.
Sure. So we had summer school in June to try to address some of the COVID loss.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't start school for a while last fall. We just were going half days and all that. So we did have a good strong month in June of school.
Uh-huh.
We followed that up with the week after summer school. We had a week of training for our immersion teachers.
Nice.
A week long, 8 hour a day. We did lots of we're working on some oral proficiency tests
Mm-hmm.
or an oral proficiency or an oral curriculum to just really get our kids where one of our focuses this year was we want to like focus on um, our speaking, the kids' speaking ability.
Yeah.
And then we spent most of July. So some of the teachers were off, some stayed on contract on some day contracts or some week contracts to work on we got these different kind of like we've got some programs called seedling and different kind of programs that we just need to put input into,
Yeah.
boom cards, and just really getting a lot of the curriculum, especially technological curriculum,
Yeah.
in place for the school year. So that was
Wow.
about it.
That was a busy summer.
It was busy. That I feel like everybody's pretty excited and that we have all these new tools. We brought on some youth workers. That was kind of cool. We brought on some like high school kids that are graduated to come and like help us. We employed them for the summer to come help do
Yeah.
stuff in immersion. So it served two purposes. We're in a place where we're the poorest county in the United States, so we don't have a lot of job opportunities.
Yeah.
So we got to give our own students jobs for the summer. We
Nice.
also got to like have them be in the language for the summer. They had to take a class every day in the language, and then they spent time like inputting information. And
Yeah.
then the local state college, they took a class from them
Mm-hmm.
for teaching how to teach the language, and
Wow.
so they got 3 credits this summer too that the college paid for. So that was a partnership with us. So
Yeah.
all those things happened this summer, and it was really exciting and fun. And I feel like we're in a good place, and the language is really at the forefront of like lots and
Yeah.
lots of youth mind.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. I mean, just like kudos to you, man. And just like putting together employment opportunities as well as continuing to grow the language, and providing maybe pathways for future employment for the students. That's awesome.
Yes, it definitely is exciting.
Yeah. And now you're all prepared for the new year, right?
Well, I would not. I don't think not for a lot of years, and that's. I think that what you learn is you're never prepared for the new
Yes.
year. But I think we're definitely in a better situation that we've been in a long time
Right.
for our immersion teachers. We
Yeah.
added another grade this year. I feel like our teaching staff's getting stronger. Their
Hmm.
language use is getting better. So, and their focus is changing now, because before it was just surviving, and now it's like really
Right.
trying to thrive and
Right.
really put the language at the forefront of, like, not just in the classroom educationally, but just like orally having our kids become speakers, and like really revitalization being like the key component of what we're doing.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm really celebrating the growth and the transition of like surviving to, sort of digging down into your program and getting to the place of continued thriving and growing. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Congratulations. What a busy summer.
Yeah. Thank you.
And we've got some other things to celebrate. So over the summer, OIE has been able to review your APR and really dig into that as well. And so we wanted to share with you just some broad overview about, first things to celebrate as it relates to the APR. So looking across all of NAL at ED grants. And what we found was that 82% of everyone who submitted their APR on time and via G5 reported on all four GPRA measures. That wasn't necessarily the case in the past. The other thing is that 73% submitted the APR on time. So those are really areas to celebrate, and we wanted to just put that out there. There were some areas to improve. Some of those areas were making sure that each APR had an authorized representative signature. Sometimes, for those who weren't able to submit the G5 online, the APR via G5, excuse me, a lot of the times what got held up was the authorized representative signature that really held up the timely submission of the APR. The other thing was GPRA measure reporting. There's still a little bit more tweaks we need to do to really improve the GPRA measure reporting, and then also working on budget details. So we're going to go a little bit into that. And the first one is just, here's a tip. Once the G5, the APR opens up on G5, you may want to go ahead and complete the cover sheet, excuse me, and then submit that already to your authorized representative, because we know sometimes these are very busy people, or maybe they're on your board and they're hard to get a hold of. And so if you get that done first and then go back and start to complete the other sections of your APR, hopefully you will have that signature done in time for you to be able to submit on time. The other piece was really just reporting about the GPRA measures. We still have grantees reporting in the target columns. So basically, for all GPRA measures, that area that's circled there on the section A, that should all be blank when you turn in your GPRA measures. And we find that grantees are still, and we understand, are still wanting to fill the spaces to make sure that they are sharing everything that's going on. But really, for your GPRA measures, you want to keep that space blank. Or if the G5 won't let you leave it blank, to just put 1/1, because there are some times where the system kind of gets stuck and you need to put something in. And if you put 1/1, then we'll know that that was the case when we review your APR. Any questions about that?
No, I mean, I can understand how we're definitely confused too, I think, but I think we figured it out.
Okay, cool. Again, here are your GPRA measures. I'm sure by this time you folks are very acquainted with this. The first one is really about proficiency of the language. The next one is focused on the progress in learning of the native language. And of course, the third one is really looking at improvement in academic outcomes and comparing that from one group to another. And then also the difference between the average daily attendance of students participating in your program versus a comparison group, and really trying to identify that comparison group, from the beginning. And so, Matthew, what comparison group do you use?
Well, we use, because we have So we have non-speakers and like we had so we have a multi-age class that's 4 through 6 that we
Mhm.
can compare to the kids that weren't speaking. And
I
then we
see.
compare to previous years to now.
I see. Okay. Okay, so you have a very clear idea about who that group is. So again, every year you want to maybe look to make sure that that comparison group still applies and that they are still, of course, these are the students who are not getting the language instruction, right? And then the theory is that the more students are connected to their language, connected to the culture, the better their, uh, their affinity and confidence in school and desire to be in school as well as to do well in their academics. And so that's really what the last two measures are uh, showing. And then when we get to the budget report, and let me just go ahead and in the chat, I'm going to share an example. Let me get that there before I start talking. Okay. So I just put a sample of optional budget reporting form, and this is really to discuss and look at the type of information we need primarily in the narrative section. And so we had quite a few grantees who were reporting, low spending at the time of the APR, but also reported that they would have no carryover. However, it was a little difficult to determine that and understand what was going on because of the maybe incomplete narrative in the two narrative columns. And so if you look at that sample, it gives a little bit of information, more information about what we would actually be looking for in those two narrative columns. And so when you look at column one, that first column that's circled, really should be asking yourself why you have the amount remaining and how you plan to expend it by the end of September. And so really start taking the time to write that out and explain that. And then in column two, include what you plan to do with any carryover in the new grant year. So again, if you are in your APR, if you're reporting maybe you've only spent 10% of your annual award, but you don't anticipate any carryover, then in the column one, we really should provide some really good information about how you are going to make up that and expend all the money, like pretty much 90% of your grant period in the remaining 6 months of the grant. And so at the time of the APR, you should really have expended 50 to 60% of your budget. And then that kind of makes sense of how you're going to be expending and explaining how you're going to expend the remaining 50%. But if you have only expended 10%, you really need to have a robust explanation of how you're going to intend to expend 90% if you are saying that you're not going to have any carryover. Does that make sense, Matthew?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yep,
No.
for sure it does.
Okay.
Why
Okay.
didn't she respond?
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was making sense.
Yeah, totally. Makes
Okay.
sense.
Awesome. So then the next thing is the section C optional reporting form. So while we had some grantees submitted, others wanted to do it on another format or didn't submit the information at all. And this is really critical information for us to have because we collect that and use and OIE collects it and uses it to make decisions regarding program, both in present and future. And so we really want to encourage you to either complete the form or provide the same information in another format. If you were not able to submit the information, whether it's in the optional section C reporting form or you didn't submit the same information in another format, you want to make sure you can go ahead and do that as soon as possible or at least if you're anticipating doing an APR update, to submit that Section C optional reporting form, or again, the information that's in there with your APR update. Again, that's really helpful and important information for OIE to have. The other thing is, I just want to share this last year, the Sarah created this really helpful APR tool with OIE to really help you go through your APR and check to make sure that you have all the elements. And so I really want to encourage, whether it's at the beginning of you completing your APR or at the end or both, to sort of go through it and check your APR via these different elements in this tool. It walks you straight through the APR and make sure that you have all the different pieces. Hey, Robert, nice to see you. So one of the things is we wanted to get your thoughts around APR and your APR, and just sort of ask you, which parts of the APR do you feel that you do a best that you do the best job completing, and why? And because we're a small group, you can just sort of come off of mute.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know best at reporting. I think that we try to do the best we can. I feel like we want to be able to convey what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We just want to convey that. I feel like,
Yeah.
I don't know if we do or not. So, I guess the thing that would be helpful to us would just be like feedback on our APR personally as a grantee.
Mm-hmm.
Our person could reach out to us and say, these are the things that look good. These are the things that you need to strengthen before your next one. But that'd be helpful to us.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. And then, all right, right there. What part of the APR do you, well, and I guess that you kind of answered that question, Matthew. And Robert, if you want to chime in, you can come off of mute as well. Just maybe, what part do you feel you do well, or what part is maybe challenging that you maybe have a little difficulty completing, or, and maybe every year you're trying to work on getting better at it. Any thoughts, Robert?
I just want to get better at reporting and hitting all those benchmarks that the grantees like to want to see.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks. So the last question is really, what if, with a new grantee, what lesson would you share with them regarding, completion of the annual performance report and that process? What would you share with a new grantee that you learned?
Collect your data as soon as that the dates that your report covers. Start putting together your report long before the deadline.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with them. I think that we've definitely found that we needed to make a spreadsheet early and collect data as we went, like on everything that we did.
Yeah.
And then when it came to APR, it was all in one place, and we were able to review quickly and not trying. I don't think the very first year we did that very well. So we're trying to remember and go back, and then it's a big struggle. And
yeah, that's great. That is really important information, right? I mean, like preparing all the way through the entire year, so you're not sort of like scrambling at the end. So that's a great tip. Thank you. So we're going to go through in this section some frequently asked questions that come up in office hours. And here's a list of them, really. How do you count participants? Who is eligible for program services? How do you go about adding activities or services or adjusting service groups? And what is a local policy versus an OIE requirement? So we're going to go through this. And this is really, the first one is really addressing, how do you count your students? And so really for a unique student number, you want to be sure that you count each student only once. So even if a student receives multiple services. So you can call it a unique student or unduplicated students. Those are various terms. So this item really trips up a lot of people, and so we want to talk through this briefly to help it be clearer. The definition on the screen comes right from the Section C optional budget reporting tool, and this is where you would be counting and providing those numbers. I mean, you can determine the number of unique students you serve by counting each student only once, even if the student receives multiple services. And so right there on the screen is a picture of an example of, for those who like to visualize and what this means. And so we have three, three participating in after-school tutoring, and two participate in work-based learning. So if that's the case, then how many students are unique? And what you would have there is that the total number would be there are 4 unique students. Okay, so again, you're just counting the students once. We can see this here on another table again, to sort of get another view at this. You can see how students are organized by the name and then the types of services that they're accessing. So if I was to ask you how many unique students there are, what would you say? What would be your best number?
I mean, I'd say all 6 of them.
Yep. That would be. That would be correct. 6. So again, it doesn't matter how many services the student attends. What you really want to do is just count each student only once. Awesome. And then when it comes to looking at student eligibility, here's some examples that have come up in office hours. There was a question about foster children, and not necessarily that because they're a foster child, but really the question was more focused on how do you determine if this foster child is native, is a native child. And so a foster child is placed in a tribal member's home, and the foster agency has reported that, to the best of their knowledge, this child is Native American. So can this student participate in our services? What do you folks think? Yes or no?
I'd say yes.
Yeah. Yep. If the answer would be yes, and that would primarily be based on, again, your own program's determining. As far as the OIE and the grant is concerned, it would be a yes. Here's another scenario. A Native student is living with their grandparents during the summer. Can they be enrolled in your culture summer camp? What do you folks think?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Again, as far as the OIE grant is based, yes, they can. And it goes back to, your program and what you would determine, as well as what you originally wrote in your proposal. The next scenario is, can a student who graduated from high school who wants to participate in a career mentorship program, can they be involved in that during the summer program? Yes or no?
I would say yes for all 4.
I hope so.
Yeah. Yep. That would be it. It would be yes. Usually what you want to do is they are eligible to participate in your programs up until the time where they become, up until like when the new college year begins. Once that new school year begins, because they are now considered postgraduate, they would probably have to move on to the college, and they would not be eligible for your program as an actual participant. Now, maybe like Matthew, the work that you're doing, you could be hiring them on as a student teacher's aide or something by creating those jobs, and so maybe they would be coming on as personnel instead. And then the last one you said yes is, can a tribal member who does not reside in the service area participate in the services? And you said yes. Again, that depends a lot on what you wrote in your proposal, as well as your own program requirements. So yes, yes, and yes, and yes. And then as it relates to scope of services change, we get this quite often. And so really the question is like, how do you go about adding services, activities, or adjusting service groups? And so to do this, you really want to, again, refer back to that foundational document, which was your original proposal in response to the NAL ED NIA. And so you really want to go back to your proposal again. And then if there's any question, have a discussion with your program officer or the OIE technical assistance team. I always think it's a best practice to just keep, even if you maybe don't have a question, just have a discussion with your program officer, and that could be a discussion via email, or also trying to find some time to talk with them. It's always great, like you said, Matthew. One of the best ways to keep OIE in the loop about all of the amazing things you have going on is to, talk to them and send emails. It doesn't just have to happen in the APR, but bringing them along is really helpful and benefits your program. So you want to have that discussion, So for example, maybe your proposal stated that you were serving high school students in grades 9 through 12 and you wanted to expand to 8th grade in order to better prepare them for 9th grade courses. This would be a change in your scope that should be discussed with your program officer, because that was not necessarily in your proposal. And I'm not saying that it would or wouldn't be approved, but again, that discussion, it makes perfect sense. But having that discussion, because your program officer has the final decision when it comes to changing your scope. Another example is that we hear a lot is about expanding to serve another school district, not mentioned in your original proposal. Again, you want to have a discussion with your program officer. You want to make sure that you are accomplishing everything with your current school district that you wrote in your proposal, and that you can actually expand to another school district within your constraints of your current budget. And so sort of thinking through those pieces prior to having the discussion with your program officer. Any questions about that? No? Okay. Oops, sorry. So this is what often comes up, and we saw this in the previous slides, really trying to determine which is a local decision or an OIE decision. And so really, it really comes to who has decision-making authority and determining when it requires OIE engagement or is an internal organizational decision-making. So any changes that require OIE approval are any issues that would be outside of the approved project. Again, like I've been saying, is going back to your proposal. That is what OIE considers as the approved project. And any issue that has budget implications. So again, like on that last example of expanding to another school district, you really need to ask yourself, does this have any budget implications? And if it does, then I need to send an email, have a discussion with my program officer. As it relates to the local decision, it really has to do with any of your organizational policies, procedures, and program requirements. And this is, NAL is a perfect example of OIE and program being able to make their own decision. For example, on the first, actually all of the GPRA, you get to decide, the first two, you get to decide what is proficiency and what is progress. And you also get to decide what type of tool you are using. And like we were discussing with Matthew earlier, even for the the attendance GPRA, you really get to choose what your comparison group is, as well as what is improved daily attendance. So those are all local decision making. Now, let's say you were to go outside of that, and like I said, you wanted to expand to another school district, that would require engaging your program officer at OIE. Are there any questions about that?
Nope.
Okay, awesome. So here's just some scenarios that regularly come up, and you folks will be able to say whether this is uh, local or OIE decision making. And I'm sure you're going to get this one. What type of assessment do we use to measure student academic progress? Can we make that? Can you folks make that decision within your program, or does that need to go to OIE?
Local.
Yeah, awesome. The next question is, we are currently serving K-12. We want to expand our NAL grant services to include an immersion school program. Do you think that's local or OIE?
OIE.
Yes. And really because we're expanding, right, from our current proposal, which was just serving K-12. Great. And then we have a student who is from another tribe and has moved onto our reservation. Can we serve that student? We answered that question already, right? We said yes in the previous slide. And the other question is, can we provide language classes for adults? This actually comes up a lot. What do you think the answer for that is, local or OIE?
You're saying if it's not part of your proposal earlier,
Yes.
it'd probably be OIE.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, with NAL, a lot of NAL was focused on K-12 education. And so you would really have to have a discussion with your program officer about how you would be doing that. Now, I mean, these are adults, and so this is not necessarily family. I know some of you do bring families along is in a way to support the child's education. And so this would be definitely a change in scope that would need to be discussed with OIE. And then here's the last one. We want to use performance-based assessment to measure student language proficiency. Can we? What type of decision is that? Is that a program level or organization level decision or OIE?
I'd say local.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Awesome. You guys got it. Now we're going to transition over that we have 2 months remaining. And so, there's some work we need to be thinking about already. I don't know, maybe you've been thinking about this already now, but really the two questions that should be coming up in your head as you think about wrapping up the year is, do I need to submit a budget revision? And do I need to submit an APR update? And so to answer the first question, we really want to see is, should you be submitting a budget revision? Now, this is what can help you maybe answer some of these questions. Excuse me. You want to check your current drawdown amount. Make sure, maybe check with your fiscal office, make sure that you've gotten, you've been drawing down funds regularly, that you are on top of it. You don't have a huge sort of like, amount. I mean, it's fine if you have a huge amount to draw down, but you want to make sure that you have drawn down your, most up to date, have all of your requests in, and that it's up to date. You also want to check if have any of your plans changed for the beginning of the school year, and will that require a budget revision? And so really sort of looking at what's coming up, and does that, require a budget revision for the beginning of the year. And then, do you have a plan for expending all of your funds before the end of the grant year? So again, you just want to make sure you are trying to expend all of your funds. If you do have a carryover, you want to you want to be thinking about what's coming forward in the next year and make sure that your budget currently where that carryover will be occurring makes sense for the new coming grant year. And so really wanting to think through that. So the other piece is that you will be your budget revision for next year is due November 17th. And so, at the beginning of each grant year, you are required to submit another budget revision, and that one takes into consideration your carryover funds. Now, your carryover funds are going to be whatever line item they are in at the end of this fiscal year. They will those funds will remain in that budget line item, or in that budget category for the third year. Now, what you would be changing in this budget revision is any of the third year funds, and wanting to adjust that based on, again, what your program plans are moving forward, as well as where those carryover funds land. So, strategically, you might want to take some time to look at your current year, this second year budget, and maybe submit a budget revision to move what you may be anticipating as carryover in this current year. Because again, wherever that carryover fund is, it moves over into the third year and it remains in that budget line item.
Alani,
Yes.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So if we don't do like a carryover request, like if we didn't do a carryover request from year 1 to year 2,
Yeah.
does that money, did it carry itself over, or did it just, like we just assumed that we lost it. We didn't had COVID, so we didn't spend everything. We weren't worried about it because we just couldn't. So did that carry itself over, or did it just like stop? And then, because we're just operating with the assumption of the budget for year 2.
Yeah. Well, for many of you folks, it did carry over. And so, but that might mean that it was you're like, so if you had carryover from year 1 to year 2, it may mean that your grant award in year 2 was adjusted based on the carryover. I'd have to go back and look at yours in particular, but generally carryover funds, you didn't have to apply for the carryover. It carried over.
Okay.
And then your second year or the next year funding was adjusted. That will probably be likely to happen in this year. Again, it depends on how much you have remaining. The adjustment of the next year's funding. So, for example, let's say you have maybe 50,000 or 20,000 carryover. That may your third year budget revision may be adjusted to take into consideration that 20,000 carryover. Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll check into that. Thank you.
Yeah. But again, yeah, it would be a good time to check in. Again, I want strategically, you want to look at if you're anticipating carryover at this end of time of the year, where you want that carryover to be come next year, because whatever line item it is at the end of at September 30th, that's the line item it will remain in your third year. You won't adjust that or be able to revise that. In the third year, the budget revision will be on any new funds for year 3. That's what gets revised, not the carryover.
Okay.
Okay? Awesome. And so thanks, Sarah, for putting in the budget revision form. You folks want to check that out. There have been some changes. There's some tools there to help you. So go check that out. And let's move on. So really, the other piece that you need to be sort of gearing up for or thinking about is whether or not you need to submit an APR update. So if you reported 999 on any measure in Section A, you will need to submit an APR update. So you will want to provide your measures. So maybe, like a lot of you didn't complete your maybe language assessments until the end of the school year. And so now you are able to provide data for GPRA 1 and 2. The other thing is that maybe like with GPRA 4, you weren't able to collect that information. Even GPRA 3, you probably also may have some of your own project measures that you weren't able to collect all the data. So the APR update is where it should be reported. The other one is I
Oh,
submitted an
guys.
yeah. Oh,
That's
no. I submitted an incorrect number or a number that needs to be changed in Section A of my APR. You want to, if that's the case, then yes, you want to submit an APR update. Maybe
awesome,
you
dude.
put, a zero.
Canada's gonna do
Even if
cross
you
country.
said like you weren't able to.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Maybe you weren't able to, again, you didn't have the correct number and after looking at your data this year, you want to correct that, you can go ahead and submit an APR update. The other one is I submitted all correct and complete data in Section A of my APR, and I did not report 999 for any of the measures. Do you need to submit an APR update? No, you don't need to submit an APR update if that's the case. You may have reported maybe even zero. You weren't going to have the data, you didn't have the data at the time of the APR, and you weren't anticipating having the data at the end of the grant year, and that's fine. So you are complete in your data. Are there any questions about that?
Nope.
Okay, so just some reporting reminders again. Your APR updates this year will be due October 27th. You want to make sure you catch that date. You are just submitting your Section A and also the optional Section C tool or the same information that's provided in another format. That's fine. But it should have all of the same data at the time of the APR update. If you anticipate not submitting an APR update and did not submit your optional Section C tool or the information in there, you still need to submit that. We still need that information. You can email your APR update to oie@seiservices.com. APR updates must include all measures that you reported as 999 in the spring 2022 APR. You want to make sure that you complete the required form, the ED 524B Section A. That's the only piece that needs to be updated, as well as, again, like if you did not submit the optional Section C tool, or maybe there's some updates, more students that you maybe provided services to, you can go ahead and submit that optional tool or the same information. So now we're just sort of wrapping up. We really wanted to sort of get your feedback if you had, like, there was new NAL grantees coming in. What lesson have you learned that you would want to share with a new NAL ED grantee? And just to let you know, I'm sure you folks know that there was a new soliciting for proposals that went out. And so we do anticipate having another cohort of NAL ED grantees coming in soon. And so I really hope that you'll be able to share your lessons learned. And so I'm going to put up a poll coming up. Let's go here. It's a short answer poll. If you could just go ahead and take a couple minutes to fill that out, that would be great. I will be reaching out to current grantees and asking this question, and maybe asking you folks to share that information. at our next upcoming talking circle. Because hopefully by that time, we'll have a new cohort of NAL ED grantees. So you can go ahead and write in your lesson learned. And while you're doing that, I will move forward. The other thing I wanted to sort of remind you, if you maybe got a whole bunch of emails, or you're gearing up for the new school year, or you're in the midst of a new school year, please check your email. You should have received an email from Julian last week about the end of the year survey. It should have come via email again from Julian. The survey went out to any participant who participated in an OIE event. So some of you have other members of your team who maybe did participate in the PD meeting, or maybe in some talking circles, or office hours. They will receive the email as well. We really want to encourage everyone to provide us that feedback. Is really valuable. It helps for us to think about planning, whether it's the PD meeting or talking circles, or even really specific content webinars that we can provide to assist you folks. So again, really want to make sure that you're doing that. The other thing is, while we're talking about, maybe other staff that you have participating in maybe like the PD meetings, we really want to encourage you to invite your team members to participate in the talking circle. So it doesn't just have to be the program director. You can have your fiscal team members participate. Also, maybe some program people if they have the time. I know sometimes they're in the classroom, and so that makes it a little challenging. But we really want to open this up to more of your program staff to participate. Do you folks have any questions?
I do not.
I think, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
I said I do not.
Okay.
I was just gonna have a comment, say in relationship to the time frame which we were awarded our grant, it's really unique because we were awarded our grants in time of COVID, and so like our experience with it, has that unique feature. So any any advice that we might have, again, it's all like, well, we have the experience of being awarded a grant during a global pandemic.
Yeah.
But we're actually technically not out of the pandemic.
Right.
It's still ongoing. It's just that our response to it has now been to continue as if it ain't happening anymore.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think when it comes to like not being able to spend monies in those line items, we actually have really good experience in that, and we have experience in budget reform now. That we didn't want that experience, but
Right.
I get, and I'm not trying to prop myself up as someone who has who's an expert master in this. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to not being able to spend out line items due to just circumstances, it's really good that we have that experience. Yeah, and we might be able to offer some type of perspective on that.
Definitely. I mean, I think a lot of the lessons I hear you folks sharing can be transferred, beyond pandemic, right? I mean, there was a lot of innovation you folks did, and a lot of hustle, and a lot of creativity as it relates to both continuing to deliver programs and spend down your funds at the same time. Right? You guys got really creative, and I'm sure there are lessons learned that you can transfer, beyond the pandemic, like you said, which would be really helpful to new grantees, and as well as just the broader landscape on programming within Native communities, and in particular with Native language. So I totally agree with you, Robert. So just wanted to sort of give you folks an idea about, you know, things to check out. The OIE Project Directors Meeting, if you want to revisit any of the session recordings, you can go ahead and do that. And through Pathable, you will have access to it for 1 year. You can log on and see other sessions. Maybe, you know, maybe there was a resource that you wanted to you know, access, but you forgot where it was. You can go back and review that and get those materials and access that knowledge. Also, the 50th anniversary celebration. We want to just you want to see the winners of the art contest and look at the studio testimonial recognition. You could go ahead and do that, see that event. And let's see, let me post this in the chat. Some links so you can go ahead and check that out. To see this, some really great information, again, that can be used beyond just that event. The other thing is, like I was saying before, you know, maybe in the new year you have new staff coming on, or that maybe a switch in staff, or maybe new positions, and you want to have them be engaged in the technical assistance and maybe a talking circle or office hours. Now's the time to go ahead and send any email changes and additions to the OIE at SEIservices.com. So if you need to maybe change, you know, a program staff or a fiscal person's information, you could go ahead and do that. Send their name, their role, and their email address, and we will include them, either include them or update their information. You can go ahead and do that. Again, we really want to just encourage you to invite other staff if it's appropriate. And then we will be having our next talking circle coming in October. That date will be announced, and as well as our office hours coming up. We have office hours on October 25th. So if you are going through, maybe, you know, maybe you're thinking like, after today, maybe I do want to do a budget revision, and you have a couple questions, you can pop into office hours. You can also sign up for individual coaching with your TA team, as well as contacting your program officer. Now we have our regular end of event poll. If you could just complete that really quickly to say how this went for you today, this talking circle, that'd be really helpful. It helps us improve our content and make sure that it's relevant to you. If you have any questions or concerns, you can go ahead and contact Donna. There's her email, as well as the OIE at SEIservices.com, the technical assistance team. Awesome. Thanks for participating. We got 100% in the event poll. Thank you. If you have any questions, do you have any questions? If not, we can be finished, or comments even.
No, just thank you. Appreciate you. So,
okay. Have a great school year, beginning of the school year. Take care.
Yes, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Okay. Aloha.
Aloha.